Okay, friends, let's look at some Latin. Sorry, we're not at the library today, but it doesn't prevent me from teaching you some Latin, so here we go. If we look at your syllabus, and I hope you have it right with you, it is November 11th, and it calls for a new prayer, the Fatima prayer, that you say usually in your rosary, and you have it right here on your prayer handout that I have right now on the screen. So why don't we start? In nomine Patris et Filii et Spiritus Sancti. Amen. Domine Iesu, dimite nobis debita nostra, salva nos ab igne inferiori, perduc in celum omnes animas praeserti meas, quae misericordiae Tue maxime indigent. Amen. In nomine Patris et Filii et Spiritus Sancti. Amen. All right, there's no better way to start. Now, let's look at the pages that need to be covered, 258 to 279. I sure hope you have your book with you, open. And in this presentation, I will cover the topic of grammar. And then I will probably pause it, then I'll do it on another presentation, a few things about the vocabulary, and that should do it for this week. So, 258. If you look at your book on page 258, we have a topic called the relative clauses of characteristics. Relative clauses, relative clauses of purpose. I'm getting ahead of myself here. Relative clauses is something that we just saw together. If you don't remember, let me refresh your memory. Relative clauses, in English, for example, Aurelia is the girl who lives in Italy. Who lives in Italy is a relative clause in English. In Latin, it would be something like this. Aurelia est puella, quae in Italia habitat. So, quae in Italia habitat, this clause that starts with quae, the relative pronoun, is the relative clause. So you remember that. Now, what happened in relative clauses, we had a main verb in the indicative and a subordinate verb also in the indicative. So that was something to remember. Now, another thing that we need to recall also is a certain clause that we call the clauses, purpose clauses. Purpose clauses, I think, is one of the first clauses that we saw with the subjunctive mood. Remember that subjunctive? Well, we saw the little conjunction ut, or in the negative, the little conjunction ne, and these conjunctions introduced a purpose clause. And in the purpose clauses, we had a subordinate verb in the subjunctive. Now, if you look on page 258, what we're doing right here, we are combining both our relative clauses and our clauses, our purpose clauses. So, here on your screen, I have something that I took from another book that's talking exactly about what we need to study in our Henley book today. So, I'm going to use this to present to you our relative clauses of purpose. All right, the title is right here, relative clauses of purpose. And if you look on the top right here, the dependent verbs or the dependent verbs or the subordinate verbs will be in the subjunctives. Okay, they will be in the subjunctive, either in the present or in the imperfect subjunctive. Now, could anyone tell me, I guess you can't, but just think about it, when we use the present subjunctive and when we use the imperfect subjunctive? Can we just mix them up, or what do you think? Well, I sure hope that you thought about the terms primary or secondary. If you're in a primary sequence, meaning if your main verb is in the present, future, or future perfect, then your main verb, subordinate verb, is going to be in the present subjunctive. If your main verb is in the perfect, imperfect, or pluperfect, then your subordinate verb is going to be in the imperfect. All right, so that's something for us to remember. Now, let's look at our relative clauses of purpose. The relative clauses of purpose indicate the purpose of the antecedent. Okay, so let's look at that blue sentence that we have right here in the middle of this page. Montem petimus quem ascendamus. All right. Now right here, if you look at this right here, montem petimus quem ascendamus. What should shock you is this a right here. Why didn't we put ascendimus in the indicative? We have ascendamus in the subjunctive. So as soon as you see a relative clause right here, quem ascendamus, in which you have a subjunctive verb, ascendamus, then you gotta think, oh, maybe I am in front of a relative clause of purpose. Alright? So then if that's the case, you have three ways to translate this relative clause. And the way it's shown right here is these three circles. Right here, and right here. The first way you can go is by keeping the translation of quem right here as who, whom, which, whose, or that, or something like this. The translation of your relative pronoun. But then your subordinate verb, you might want to translate it as may or might. So here the translation we have for this would be this one right here. Okay, we petimus, we are looking for a montem, for a mountain, which we may climb. Okay, we say may climb because here we have a present subjunctive, ascendamus, and present subjunctive is translated as may. If we had here secondary sequence, like something in the past right here, and ascenderemus, then we would use the might translation for the imperfect subjunctive. Alright? So that's the first way to go. Maybe the most natural way for you to go, if you see this, you may want to translate it with which, or whose, or who, or something like this, right? However, you have two other options. Since you identify this as a purpose clause, then you can drop your translation of the relative pronoun and substitute it with to. We seek a mountain, or we are looking for a mountain to climb. Okay? And here in English, it's actually turning into an infinitive. To climb, right? There's no we in there, so that might be a little confusing to some of you. If you don't like it, don't use it too much. Stick with something that you're more comfortable with. This one right here on the left, so that might be a more comfortable way to translate this sentence. Okay? Montem petimus quem ascendamus. We are looking for a mountain so that, translation of quem are a bit different, so that we, that's the translation of mus right here, may climb it. So that we may climb it. I know this it right here is not part of the Latin, but you might have to add it in order for it to make more sense. Alright? So that's basically it. So what we want to say right here is that your qui, quae, quod, the pronoun that you already know, has to be translated a little bit like ut. Okay? The negative of it would be pretty easy. It's just would be quem, and then later on in the sentence you would have non ascendamus, which would translate we are looking for a mountain not to climb. Okay? So that, if you have qui, quae, quod in any form and non later, that would be standing for ne instead of ut. Alright? So that's for that. Back in your other book, in your Henley book, if you look at page 263, they talk to you about purpose clauses introduced by quo. And actually, you find this when you have a comparative in a sentence. And actually, if you look back on the screen right now, on the screen, we have this covered really quickly at the bottom of this page. Quo here is equivalent to ut when there is a comparative in this dependent clause. So what we say is don't use ut if you have a comparative, like facilius right here is a comparative that mean more easily. Okay? So, Pharaoh, I carry a baculum, a stick, and then quo, so that possim, I may be able to ascendere, to climb, facilius, more easily. Okay? So here we use quo because there's a comparative in the sentence. That's all. It's just a synonym for ut, and it's more proper Latin to do something like this. Alright? So that's about it. I know it's pretty important stuff. You may want to listen to what I explained again. I hope you were taking notes. When I was taking that, that helps you to understand. If you need to go over it again, go over it again. It's not a long presentation, so do that because that might be just a very good thing for you to do. The rest of the chapter, if you go of the section, this section that you have to cover for next time, continues on page 267, and on page 267, that's really something minor. Okay, that's not what I'm asking right here. Let me go back to this beautiful picture right here, and in this section, we're talking about direct questions. So direct questions really can be asked with different things, either with interrogative adverbs. You have a bunch of them at the bottom of page 267. You can have interrogative particles, like that you would kind of tag on at the end of the word, like the ne, N-E, that you can tag on at the end of a verb, for example. And then you have some interrogative adjectives or pronouns that you should be familiar with. If you go to page 271, page 271, we're talking here about the interrogative pronoun. In English, for example, an interrogative pronoun would be who are you? Who is an interrogative pronoun? Or with whom are you going to church? Whom would be an interrogative pronoun. All right. So in English, in Latin, we have a pronoun that looks a little bit like qui, quae, quod, our relative pronoun, but it's quis, quis, quid. And I would like you to memorize this on page one, on chart number 140 in your grammar book. So please do that. It might not be listed in the list of charts to memorize on your syllabus. No, see, I missed that one. So you may want to add right here chart number 140 for you to memorize for next time. That's an important one for you to know. Okay, and this you'll see is translated really really easily. Keep going in your book, page 272, 273, and then you get to page 274, where we are covering the interrogative adjective. Now, the interrogative adjective is similar to the pronoun, however, it's there to describe a noun, like an adjective does, right? So, for example, you would ask, the example they give you on page 274, which men did you see? Which men? Quos viros. See, quos describes viros. Quos viros, vidisti. Here is an interrogative adjective, and the declension of the interrogative adjective is actually exactly the same as the declension of the relative pronoun qui, quae, quod. That means whom, which, or that. So that's for you to remember. The rest of the chapter, that's about it. So with these 10 or so minutes, I covered most of the material that you need to know. Now, without having interaction with you, I'm going over it a little bit more quickly than I would in class. So it would be important for you maybe to listen to this again. Make sure you understand it. If you have questions, write them down as you pause the lecture, and then give me a call, send me an email, and then I will answer your question that way. Okay? Now I will pause it. And then there's one more little presentation that will be about vocabulary, so please refer to this right now. See you on the other side, okay?